Tales of 1001 Nights. Stories from Arab heritage. The tale of the merchant whose hand was cut off. Once upon a time, the humpbacked jester was the king's favorite entertainer, bringing joy and laughter to the royal court. The king cherished the jester so much that he simply could not imagine a night without him. However, one evening, when the jester failed to appear, the king felt an unsettling absence, but did not suspect that anything terrible had happened. As the next day passed and the jester did not return to the palace, concern filled the king's heart. He inquired about his beloved jester and learned from some palace guards that the humpbacked jester had been murdered the previous night. The chief of police, in a frantic attempt to uncover the truth, found that each time he tried to interrogate a suspect, another person came forward claiming to be the jester's killer. Soon, there were 4 men who all claimed to have been responsible for the jester's death. In a fury, the king commanded the chief of police to bring the jester's body and the 4 self-proclaimed killers to him. The chief complied, carrying the jester's lifeless form and the 4 suspects into the king's presence. As they entered, everyone bowed in respect, and the chief recounted the peculiar events surrounding the jester's death. The king was astonished. "I have never seen or heard anything as remarkable as this tale," he exclaimed. "If anyone has a story that is even more extraordinary, I shall set him free. Otherwise, I will order that you all be executed for killing the jester who brought me such joy." At that moment, a merchant stepped forward and said, "If it pleases you, O King of Time, I have a story that is even more bizarre than the tale of your humpbacked jester." The king turned to the merchant and said, "I permit you to speak. What tale do you bring?" The merchant began his story, recounting his past and how his father had been a broker in Egypt. After his father passed away, he inherited his shop and business. One day, as he sat in his shop, a remarkably handsome and well-mannered young man approached him, dressed in elegant attire. This young man presented him with a handkerchief containing a sample of sesame seeds and asked, "How much is a bushel of this hulled sesame worth?" The merchant replied, "About 100 dirhams. The young man explained that he had a large quantity of sesame he wanted to sell, and requested the merchant's assistance in finding buyers. He handed the merchant the sample and instructed him to show it to traders while telling him to meet him at the Khan al-Jawali in Bab al-Nasr, where he would be waiting. Thus began a story filled with twists and turns, revealing the merchant's unexpected journey into the world of trade, intrigue, and the unfathomable depth of human experience. The young merchant spoke, revealing a tale of loss and misfortune as he raised his right hand from his pocket, showing the stump where his hand had once been. Grief washed over me for him, and he continued his story. "There is a long story behind the loss of my hand. I was a fabric merchant from Baghdad, and having heard of the thriving trade in Egypt, I purchased numerous luxurious fabrics to sell. I brought them with me to Egypt and settled in Khan Masroor. But to my dismay, my goods did not yield the profits I had hoped for. They barely covered the costs of purchase, the expenses of travel, and the wages of the boys who had accompanied me. That night, I was consumed by sorrow over this failed venture. The next day, an elderly broker approached me and suggested that I sell my goods to a certain trader on the condition that I receive payment later, with reasonable profit added. Instead of returning to Baghdad laden with disappointment, I agreed and sold my goods to a well-known merchant, signing a debt note in the process. Thus, I remained in Egypt, visiting that merchant every Thursday to collect the agreed-upon payments. One day, as I sat with him, a lady came into the shop to purchase a piece of silk threaded with gold. The trader offered her a piece of fabric I had sold him, valuing it at 1,000 dirhams. The lady expressed her desire to take the fabric and promised to send her servant with the payment. However, the merchant refused her, despite her obvious wealth, insisting that he needed the money to complete his payments. As the lady began to leave, I intervened, telling the merchant to give her the fabric and deduct the amount from my debt. I told the lady, "Take the fabric, and if you wish, bring the money to the market next week, or consider it a modest gift from me." She thanked me and left with a promise to repay my kindness. Strangely enough, this kind lady later became my wife. To my surprise, I discovered that she was wealthier than I had ever imagined. Yet, I swear to you, I did not marry her for her money. I even stipulated before our marriage that I would take on all the expenses of our household and her servants. Every time I received a sum from my business, I would carefully wrap it in a cloth and present it to her. This continued for several months until I finally collected the last dirham from the sale of my fabrics. At that point, I no longer had any income to support her, as per our agreement, but I didn't share this with her. This led to the disaster that resulted in the loss of my hand. The merchant asked, "How could this happen, my friend?" Tears streamed down the young merchant's face as he spoke. "After my money ran out and I found myself with nothing, I felt humiliated. Once a proud man, I became pitiful. I wandered the streets, looking for a way to find some coins without revealing my poverty to my wife. Upon reaching Bab Zuwayla, I saw a commotion and pushed my way through the crowd to discover what was happening. Unfortunately, I bumped into a soldier, and as we collided, my hand brushed against his pocket. Inside, I felt a pouch filled with coins. Temptation overcame me, and I quickly drew my hand back, hiding the pouch in my pocket. Just as I was about to slip away, the soldier noticed the loss of his money and grabbed me, striking me on the head with his spear while shouting, "Thief! Thief!" I collapsed to the ground as the people around us seized me. The soldier dragged me before the judge and accused me of stealing a pouch containing 20 dinars. The judge asked, "Do you have a witness who saw him stealing the 20 dinars?" The soldier replied, "No, but search him to confirm my words." The judge ordered my search, and they pulled the pouch containing the 20 dinars from my pocket. When the judge asked if I had stolen it from the soldier, I could not deny it. Thus, the judge ordered my hand to be cut off, and that is how it happened. The soldier, feeling pity for me, said, "You are a handsome young man, and you should not be a thief." He then handed me the 20 dinars and walked away. After several days of hiding from home, I tended to my injured hand, wrapping it in cloth before placing it in my pocket. When I returned home, my face was pale, and I felt weak. As soon as I entered my room, I threw myself onto the bed in exhaustion. My wife noticed my condition and asked about the reason for my absence and my weakness. I lied to her, claiming that I had fallen ill, and that the pain I felt was due to a terrible headache. However, she did not believe my fabricated story and began to cry for me, pleading for me to tell her the truth. When she brought me food, I was afraid to eat with my left hand, fearing she would notice what had happened to my right hand. Later, feeling thirsty, I asked her for water. She handed me a cup, and I took it with my left hand and drank. When she saw this, she realized something was wrong with my right hand. She began to cry again, urging me to confess the truth. Unable to keep it hidden any longer, I revealed what had happened and pulled out the pouch containing the coins that had led to the loss of my hand. She was deeply saddened and said, "Let me assure you that all the money you have given me is still intact in the treasury of our home. I have not touched a single dirham because I have plenty of money saved. If only you had confided in me about your financial troubles, I would have spared you from this misery." The young merchant paused for a moment before continuing his tale. What happened next caused my wife immense grief, leading her to fall seriously ill. She became bedridden, nearing death itself. In her despair, she summoned witnesses and bequeathed all her wealth and possessions to me. having them testify to that. Among her belongings was the mourning fabric that I had asked you to sell me. The merchant concluded his story, addressing the king. This is the tale I endured with that unfortunate young man, my lord. It is far more astonishing than the tale of your humpbacked jester's death. Upon hearing the merchant's words, the king of China became enraged. This story is not more remarkable than the death of my humpbacked jester, you fool. If you do not bring me a tale more extraordinary, I shall order your execution. Fear gripped the 4 men accused of the jester's murder, who trembled at the king's threatening words. At this moment, a tailor, the cause of the jester's death, stepped forward and said, "If it pleases the king of time, I have a story that is even more extraordinary than that." "Then, what are you waiting for, you fool? I have granted you permission, so tell your tale," the king bellowed. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive all the amazing and exciting stories. Also, don't forget to like and share the video everywhere.